All right, with that, we are going to swing through some news. Alden, let's take a look at some of the headlines. Yes, not all, some of the headlines spin around the nation this past week, and then we'll dive where we want to dog paddle in the swampy water. Just swim around in that swamp that never gets drained. The most recent former president of the United States of America is still on trial in New York City. This civil case based around the former president's penchant for deceiving banks, insurers, and let's face it, those relatives you don't speak with anymore, by exaggerating the value of his assets was full of explosive moments this week. This included Judge Engoron, who sounds like he really wants to help Frodo take the ring back, asking the defense lawyers to control him, and yelling at his attorney, Alina Habba, to sit down. We didn't see this because this is not on camera. This is followed by the defendant's own daughter, only 42 years young, Alden, taking the stand and pretty much answering, I don't recall, to every question. A tragic loss of her mental faculties, it would seem. This week in Mike Johnson is a problem. It was revealed that religious extremist and current Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson of Louisiana, doesn't whack one off without getting his son, sending his son a notification on his phone. We can talk more about the Covenant Eyes app later. I have some thoughts, a lot of different directions on that. But while the nation is focused on this resurfaced clip, it was revealed that the man pretty much in charge of keeping the government from shutting down in under a week, just a few days, has almost no listed assets. Johnson himself has explained this by describing himself as a man of modest means, which, if true, actually might endear him to a nation of people just trying to get by as well, including me. Your super chats go directly to my lunch today. But if it's a lie, and let me tell you, I just signed up for FanDuel to place a bet on this being a lie, it would once again unravel the myth that Republicans are for the working class, but the working class would be too busy blaming Biden for the gas prices and not OPEC Plus to see that, and of course not blaming the companies like Exxon touting record-setting profits. This past Tuesday was election night in America, which usually gets 92% less turnout than NBC's football night in America. And would you look at that? Turns out when you threaten to take away women's bodily autonomy and agency, they respond, and the youth responds, and most people respond. And don't tell Rick Santorum, but democracy does work. Andy Beshear won a second term as governor of Kentucky, and that he defeated McConnell and Trump-backed Daniel Cameron. Ohio voters overcame the stereotypes put upon them by jackasses like me and enshrined abortion rights into their state's constitution. And Virginian Democrats splashed their way to a mini blue wave, getting control of the state and essentially preventing Glenn Youngkin's desired abortion ban in that state. Also, the SAG AFTRA strike finally ended, and this, combined with the recent end of the WGA strike, means pedestrian traffic just cleared up for me on my drives over Olive and Barham, which are the same street. Alden, don't question it, just go with it. Those are some of the headlines, Alden. We'll talk more about the strike in depth, but where do you want to go first on our news discussion?
You're really good at this. Sometimes I'm like, that's Ken Knapsack. That's the guy. That's him.
That's the guy who just wants to have orange chicken for lunch.
Please fund the orange chicken habit. Look, it's sort of like is Trump now the lowest hanging fruit since ever? Yes. And I wonder do I respect the eternal commitment to the bit from his children? Kinda, in the darkest way possible.
Yeah. Eric Trump going, I never knew. Here's an email with your name on it. I didn't. I don't read my emails.
I've never heard of such things. I can't recall. It's pretty impressive, but I almost wonder, do you think we should put almost a Trump story must hit a certain level on the scale to make it into the rundown? Like
a Trump bar. Yes,
a Trump meter. Yeah.
A Trump meter, Trump bar. This is great. I like a lot of folks. I'm tired of talking about this man, but also it's hard to turn away, and I don't think you should turn away. But I'm with you. Until we need to say his name, lest he appear. I'm good kind of cutting him out of it.
Yeah, I almost am fine with it. Now, look, we say this, and then between now and next week, there's going to be some cataclysmic development, and he'll be right back in the lineup. But in the interest of shedding light on other darkness, there is this Mike Johnson thing. This guy, which, I'm looking at the comments here. We had Eli who said, yes, MAGA Mike, or as most people call him, who. This guy came out of nowhere and rose in the ranks of villains so quickly. And yeah, you in our production discussion said, what about Mike Johnson as a problem? And it's like, yeah, I am baffled that this man exists and that you can be this guy and just boo and shut up your way to one of the top offices in the land. And now here he is with a parenting porn controversy.
I'll start with Covenant Eyes. By the way, I forgot. I had some graphics prepared. We're gonna have to have a producer so to press the buttons. I really like this courtroom drawing of the monster under the bridge that's gonna eat your orange chicken lunch. One of my favorite photos there. So my thought on the I did this on my morning show, 20 Minutes of Coffee, which I have become a channel member. You can get to watch it live. Shill. Mike Johnson did. You're so right. It is a. It's not a heel turn. It's just a heel showing up to wrestle a match, and you're like, where did this guy come from? The Indies? Now he's a top dog here. I'll say this. I try to say, attack the policies, not the man. I think that's important. I don't want to just be here snarky and going after this guy who has a certain set of beliefs that I came from. I came from a lot of that world. I understand it. The Covenant Eyes thing, the app, which for those who aren't aware, it's this app he has on his phone, and you can monitor, what sites you're going to. So that way, his 17-year-old son knows that, he's not watching comedian and adult film star Sylvia Sage, who's great, by the way, very nice person, great comic. He's not watching her videos. And so his 17-year-old son knows that. I'm sure 17-year-old son has a burner phone, and I'm sure Mike Johnson does as well. How else are you going to download Grindr on it? But I don't, despite Mike Johnson looking like a guy that's going to rat on you for smoking under the bleachers, like he's the one that goes and tells teacher, or he's the one that says, hey, it's Friday, it's 3:00, you haven't assigned homework. He has that look. The Covenant Eyes app type of thing, Alden, is, I don't know where your background on this. It's so normal to that world. I almost don't want to make too much fun of it because they're going to get defensive. People I know who I grew up with are going to be like, porn can be an addictive problem. And I do agree with that in real life. It can lead to other things. There's a bigger picture. And if you feel you need some accountability, that's not a bad thing. I don't disagree with that overall. It's part of a tableau, but I don't know your thoughts on that.
It's interesting because it's like you want to have, at least in my experience growing up, you want to have an openness and a sexuality. I remember working with somebody who had a teenage son, and she was like, yeah, we've had like discussions about it. And I just say, you don't learn how to drive from the Fast and the Furious in the same way you don't learn what romance is from pornography. And so I think like there is a healthy amount of parental like engagement, but it's like you said, you don't on principle, you're not like, let's attack this guy. But then you find out about this guy and it makes it impossible. So like, it's that meter of like, he has lost that sort of that benefit. This comment right here from Lauren Roma, our friend, spouse is just as bad as he is. That's the thing, is that once that comes into it, then you can start to analyze it. Like you slip the Grindr mention in there, and you look at what's happening sort of with the modern satanic panic and drag brunch hysteria, and this ties right into that. And on his level, like, is there some just normal mom out there who's just overly concerned, doesn't know what to do? I'm positive. I'm sure there's many of them. But yeah, when it's this person, it's like, oh, he is absolutely a cheating porn addict. Like, no doubt. Like, he just has to be.
Look, this kind of monitoring what you watch or reporting it to accountability partners. The last time I was regularly in church was the early 2000s out here, a couple churches in LA, Rocky Peak Church, and one up in Porter Ranch, Shepherd of the Hills, which both became mega churches, and was one of the reasons. No problem with them. I just left for a lot of reasons, but that was one of it. But this was common back then, but the difference is, it's different than Ken, and I didn't participate in this, but it's different than Ken in 2001 telling a friend that he went to Maxim.com or FHM, resubscribed to the magazine. This isn't that. This is someone who is forming those policies, who now has a meteoric rise to power. And you're right. I made a Grindr reference. There's a lot of folks that kind of feel that maybe Mike Johnson's been dealing with some stuff. I don't want to even mock that at times. if that's what you're going through and that's your journey, and you don't feel secure in who you are, and you're struggling to find that way forward, that's a real concern. And that's something that I wish we lived in, that world where you could come to your full identity in the public for all of us. And if Mike Johnson's really been going through that his whole life, this is all allegedly. I don't know. I want him to get to that point, but he takes whatever's gone on, that internalized rage, or what he just simply says is my beliefs are based on the Bible. And I don't think it lines up. The Bible doesn't line up with even some of the stuff he's saying. That's where it gets dangerous for me. That's where Covenant Eyes gets dangerous.
Yeah, I think he was reading more Bible expanded universe and not necessarily the core.
He was reading the Timothy Zahn version of Genesis.
He was, absolutely, which is in fact as thick as the whole thing in terms of the real one. Yeah, it's just, this will come up a lot, where these culture wars and these things, and it's like, is the existence of such an app an inherent evil? No. But when it's embedded and tied in with policy, with an office of that level, I mean, the man is in the immediate succession zone for the presidency. And these are the types of things that he's concerned with. And exactly, yes. As Jared said in the comments, for the benefit of the podcast listener, the Bible never lines up with what these clowns say, because it's being used, it's being warped, it's being manipulated, and and we'll get into that as we go, no doubt. But yeah, this guy is extremely concerning. I also had the Who reaction when he was nominated and chosen, and then immediately you're like, oh, he was let's cover up the coup guy. Okay. Oh, now he's this type of guy. Oh, he's this type of guy too.
That was it's so funny. Yeah, he's been around for a bit. He's only 51, but he's been in office about 4 or 5 years. But he rises to power in a jump to the top of the card in a way that I hadn't really seen since like Sarah Palin, where it was like for 2 days people were like, "Oh my God, McCain might have. This is a great pick to combat what's going on with the young kind of generational movement behind Obama." And then 3 days later, it was like, "Oh, did they even vet her? Did they even talk to her?" Mike Johnson has some of that, where the danger of him is, I do think he's a smart guy. I do think he might just be a man of modest means who's speaking for the people. And he's the guy who, while everyone else was screaming election rigged and let's storm the Capitol, he's like, how can we actually do this? And it was part of his ideas and his policies that actually were like, here's how we actually uphold, keep these election results from happening. That's the danger of him.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that's who I wanted to start with. I think he's not going to be the last moron that we talk about today or in the run of this show. But I think that out of all of the ones that jumped out at me, that is definitely the core. But then, in terms of the widespreadness too, it's not all doom and gloom and sons and fathers having porn conversations. We also saw some heartening needed good news in terms of people out there defending the right to choose, and reminding us that while it feels like a hopeless time, there are people out there that are not apathetic, which is pretty great.
Yeah. And there's a great comment from Andy Hodges I want to come back to at the end of our news discussion, because I really agree with what he was saying, and I want to make sure my words were clearer than just some of the jokes. But yeah, the election night thing was a great I don't know, surprise confirmation, and it's a small piece in a larger puzzle, but the abortion issue being at the center of it, and how that brought people out is encouraging in so many ways. And there's also an underlying issue of abortion, a healthcare issue, a choice issue, but also it's an economic issue. So when you have some people running or saying, hey, I know it looks on paper the economy is going great, but the working family can't go to the store for less than this amount of money. There's truth in that, right? I'm feeling that. You're feeling that. So if you come in running on that and say, hey, the economics aren't really great right now, and then you also say, but you must have children, perhaps the greatest economic burden there is. I think that might also cause some people to be like, forget their high morals or what they might think of or take from the Bible or whatever. I think they're just like, whoa. Not only is it a healthcare issue, you're trying to bury me even more economically. And I think that could have something. I don't have any charts or graphs in front of me to prove that, but that's something that I would just also think would be effective.
Yeah, and none of these issues are mutually exclusive things. There's not a single thing in the entire sort of spectrum of what voters vote on that is not inherently tied in. I mean, it's the fallacy of the single issue voter. The single
Mhm.
issue voter only thinks they're a single issue voter,
That's right.
because the second that you look into any of those issues,
Mhm.
there's the money and the exchanges and the bills that are crafted with the,
Mhm.
you'll have an entire spending project hidden inside of another bill sometimes, and it just
Yeah.
becomes
Yeah.
it's so deeply complex that people can't see sort of, yeah, like the link between parenthood and healthcare and the economy such as it is. I mean, I'm looking at the price of coffee creamer and I'm like, I don't know how anyone does anything.
A lot of people made fun of one of the guys there. Well, first of all, there's the guy at the airport who was like $80 and it was $70 a whiskey. That's it. But there was the one guy who kind of went viral of he put like 6 items on his table. It was like $100 at the grocery store. And people were kind of poking fun at him. The internet today, guys, Elliot and Ricky, check them out if you don't watch them. We're pointing out
Mhm.
how some people are saying, look, you bought 6 items that can't even make a meal. So, a lot of the pushback on that. But there's truth to that, right? The
Yeah.
coffee creamer thing you're talking about, going to a store. So I can get behind some of it. It's just and I heard this phrase today by the guy. What's the guy? The guy running against Grandma Lauren Boebert in Colorado. He called it the rage attainment,
Mhm.
of politics, where she's a brand builder. Matt Gaetz is an empty vessel of no ideas. He's just building his brand for the next job, and that takes the front seat. So when a lot of those ragers are raging about this one issue, it makes sense that someone would be like,
Adam Frisch.
Adam Frisch, thank you. Support Adam Frisch. She only won by 500 votes last time. Send her full time to the Beetlejuice Theater. Maybe she can work there as an usher. But you know what I'm saying. I think I'm just repeating myself over and over again.
Yeah.
That's what I think I took from the results.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're right, and I think that in terms of where we're headed, because anything past a year and a half into a presidential term, it becomes election season again. Like
Yeah,
the season just gets longer and longer to the point where the terms are the seasons at this point.
yeah.
I didn't feel that way when I was a kid. That definitely feels like it has increased. Where like
Well,
Biden became president, and I felt like we were back in the 20.
yeah,
I felt like the 2024 conversation happened immediately after. I was like, oh, okay, all right. I guess
yeah.
we're
Yeah. It's a little bit of time, right? As a kid, summers lasted so long. As a kid, it was like I barely remembered when Mondale and Ferraro ran. It was like another
Mondale, yeah.
lifetime. Yeah, and one of the final big things for me of this election night, I think the big one in a lot of ways was Andy Bashir winning a second term. He's already entrenched as the governor there in Kentucky, beating former AG Daniel Cameron, who I don't know he was involved and muffed in glorious fashion the Breonna Taylor investigation. That was under his watch. He's a Mitch McConnell and Trump back guy in Kentucky. And again, talking about the stereotypes, right? Of the middle America, the flyover states that we all do this. They're all out there doing that. That ain't true, man. And one of the reasons I think Bashir won, other than this big abortion issue with Daniel Cameron being on that rage entertainment side, Bashir's a good governor. And I think that goes a long way for these people who have a certain intelligence that they carry into the voting booth or
Yeah.
envelope.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think people have been pushed, whether that's pushed out of apathy. I feel like I'm talking about like Nolan's Batman at this point. People need something to shake them out of apathy. They need dramatic symbols. Like I really do think that's
into the picture.
that. Yeah, I'm gonna start shaking my camera up here, but it's true. And I think people have been pushed in terms of the right to choose, and they're fed up. And I think seeing Roe go down
Mhm.
in the modern age just felt so impossible, but it was a long laid plan. I think people get sick of feeling powerless, and that plays into things like identity. It sounds so simple because in the list of problems are are these states full of hicks is so low on the problem scale. People
Yeah.
doing a country accent to make fun of you is so low on the problem scale. But I do think people especially young people, get tired of being defined by their environment and by stereotypes. You know, you mentioned like I'm a young, really left guy living in Florida, and I do get sick of saying I live in Florida and the assumptions flying in. And that happens. I mean, Jared in the comments lives near the infamous Trump house. It's in Pennsylvania, like the house that's just completely made up for him. It looks like his fan club, like that's there. And I wonder if what you're talking about of these people that are like, no, we do like this guy and we are sick of this and we do need to show that that's not us. I wonder if we're at a point, and it makes me, I don't want to say hopeful, but it makes me very curious about next year if we're going to see the turnout continue and grow and spark. We can hope. So.
And one of the big little interesting wrinkles is Kentucky's. We should check Kentucky. Maybe I'll send my fiance Grace out there with some ghost hunting machines. It might be a portal for something, because there's a stat I don't have in front of me that anytime like Kentucky wins the NCAA basketball championship, the New York Yankees win the World Series. My favorite baseball team. The last 8 presidential elections have been predicted by the governor's race in Kentucky. It's almost like science that whatever party kind of comes out ahead there, that leads to the White House. So, harbinger of good things. Is it a pseudoscience? Maybe. But it's a fascinating little stat. I think it was finally broken on the sports side, but it was crazy. Wow. Kentucky wins at basketball. Yankees win the World Series. Since 2003, 8 presidential elections have been essentially predicted by this governor's race.
I love that so deeply. I love hilarious pseudoscience. That could be a topic on a future episode. Like if the Jaguars win, then AEW booking will be really good because Tony owns both and he feels inspired. Like and there will be wrestling on this show. Don't worry. Because Trey T, you might not know me personally. I don't got sports knowledge.
You don't got sports? Okay. We got I want to shout out Dan, the Food in My Beard, great food blogger there, and a great author of If You Want to Cook Tater Tots, Dan's your guy. He lived in Columbus, Ohio for 3 years, and it's an awesome and super progressive city. It's almost felt more progressive than Boston, where I lived most of my life. Yeah, and that's part of the point here too. And I don't want to sound like I don't want to sound like Joe Manchin, who we should keep an eye on, make sure he doesn't try to run and ruin things in 2024 now that he's decided he's not going to go for re-election. I'm going to try to unite the middle, when it really just, it doesn't mean what you think it is. And it can be more destructive, but there's some truth behind it. Just trying to understand other people's point of view. It's a good, simple building block for good things, I think.
Absolutely. No, I do. And I think that there is a certain level of this is now the third time that Star Wars will come up on the show, but it's to defeat an enemy, you must know them. Like that's true. Like in context, when you're a fascist trying to dominate the galaxy, maybe not great, but out of context, he had some points. And there is, I mean, that's something that we talk about a lot amongst my friend circles. Jared from the Nerd Academy podcast is in the comments. He is a self-taught expert on the right-wing grift and on everything that's happened on the internet in the last sort of decade plus of radicalization and everything, and why these personalities go the way they go, and why they think they mean one thing, but they don't necessarily stick the landing with that meaning. It's all very complicated, but very interesting.
The right wing grift, which is now fully entrenched in the UFO world. We'll talk about that on a show going forward. You believe in aliens? You might be right, but don't believe what's going on right now around all the whistleblowers, which they have got a major victory because Sean Kirkpatrick's going to be retiring soon from the head of the committee that's been handling all the investigations on the government side. Oh, don't get me started on that whole grip.